Today I wanted to do a video comparing what I think are three of the best value for money sub homages that you can get on AliExpress at the moment. I have done full reviews of all three of these watches, so I'll leave links to those in the description to this video. So going from left to right, firstly we've got the Thorn T023. So this is very much a vintage style Submariner, so inspired really by the classic Tudor sub. So you've got this lovely photinaed dial, so this gorgeous brown dial with the kind of gilt hands, photinaed loom, this lovely faded aluminium bezel as well. Next up you've got something very, very modern looking, so the Milifortic D100, so very much in the style of the modern Submariner. Absolutely gorgeous, again ceramic bezel and a nice date magnifier as well. And then finally, kind of in the middle between the two, you've got this Watchdives WD5513. So kind of a tribute to the classic 1970s no date sub. So three watches that look very different, all I think represent excellent value for money, kind of similar in price, so all between around 150 and 200 British pounds. The Milifortic I think is just over that, so about 208 on AliExpress at the moment, but you can probably get a deal to bring it under 200. These two are both around the kind of 160 mark, so really great value. I will talk about the differences between the watches in a moment, but first I thought I'd talk about what's similar. So let's talk about designs first. So clearly all have very similar dial design, so the kind of classic Submariner dial with the round indices for most of the hours. You've got the triangle at 12 and then the lines at 3, 6 and 9. You've also got Mercedes hands on all three of them, and similar bezel design as well, even if the materials of the bezels are different. So the kind of classic minute markers up to 15 and then just every 10 minutes for the rest of the bezels. They've also all got sapphire crystal, albeit slightly different sapphire crystal from each other, and they've all got automatic movement, albeit they don't all have the same automatic movement. So all have hacking and hand winding automatic movements. The Thorn and the Watchdives both have the Chinese ETA 2824 clone, the PT5000. The Milifortic has the Seiko NH35. So I know some people do have issues with the PT5000. It does have it has a bit of a reputation for not being the most reliable of movements. I haven't had any problems with any of the watches I've got that have it inside. The other thing to bear in mind is for both of these, the PT5000 is a movement with a date, so both these watches have the kind of ghost date position if you pull the crown out one click. So let's talk about the other similarity is while the case designs are kind of different from each other, they all have 316L stainless steel cases and bracelets. The bracelets are probably where they differ the most. These two, the Thorn and the Watchdives, have drilled lugs. The Milifortic does not, and all clearly have nice big grippy crowns and crown guards as well. Okay, so let's go through each of them in turn then, and I'll highlight the differences for you. So the main difference clearly between these three is the look. They look very, very different from each other. And I'll be honest, my favourite depends on the day of the week. I love all three of these designs, and it just depends what I'm in the mood for in the morning, which one I pick up. But I think each of the brands has done a fantastic job of nailing the look of the sub that they were going after. Right, so let's talk about what's different with the Milifortic. So firstly, you've got this lovely domed sapphire crystal, so a really nice protruding crystal coming out on the top there. And then the other big difference with this one is, as I've said, this lovely kind of aged dial with the photinaed loom, and then a vintage style bracelet as well. So a rivet style bracelet, which I have to say on this version, this is the first version of this watch, the V1, is an absolute pain to resize because you need to use 2 screwdrivers to remove the screws. I believe they are fixing that on the latest version of the V2. It's also worth noting this has a pressed clasp, which is very period appropriate, but maybe not to everyone's taste. I don't mind a press clasp at all, if I'm honest. You've also got a decent number of levels of micro adjust, so 5 levels of micro adjust on that clasp. but because of the rivets on the bracelet, you actually can't use those two. The bracelet won't go in enough because of the rivets. So effectively 3 levels of micro adjust on the clasp, but you should still be able to get a decent fit. In terms of dimensions, so this is 40mm in diameter, 46.6 lug to lug, and 12.3 thick, including that big domed sapphire crystal, and just a plain case back as you'd expect for a sub homage. Okay, so the Milifortic then. Oh, and also worth saying in terms of similarities, another similarity is all 3 of them have female end links on the bracelet, which if you've got a smaller wrist like me, so I've got a 6 1/4 inch wrist, is definitely welcome. Right, so Milifortic then. So a wider, chunkier case, still 40mm, but looks a lot bigger than the Thorn, doesn't it? So actually the same diameter, but it just got a bit more presence. Partly, I think, because of the wider, thicker lugs, but also because it's all black rather than having the faded bezel insert. Other differences then, so clearly applied indices, this lovely etched ceramic bezel, and the date magnifier as well. All look really, really nice. The blackness of the dial on this watch, it's got this lovely kind of glossy black dial, which looks absolutely glorious. And the indices, the applied indices, look really great against it as well. So a super, super legible watch. Also got the plain case back on it. The clasp is a fairly, kind of standard style clasp, not really a particularly subby looking clasp. 4 levels of micro adjust, but a decent enough pressed clasp. And the bracelet on this one is, a decent 3-link oyster style bracelet. Okay, moving on then to the Watchdives. So this one, a no date sub, very much in the kind of 70s style. So they've gone with an aluminium bezel insert, which is gloriously black. It's this really nice, rich matte black, as is the dial. Silver hands on this one, as opposed to the gilt ones on the Thorn. And I have to say, I feel like the hands on this watch, the minute hand in particular, I think is a tiny bit too small. If you look at it compared to the Milifortic, it looks a tiny bit slimmer, but that's really one of my very few criticisms of this watch. In terms of the bracelet, so a nice 3-link oyster style bracelet. Again, this one though does have an on-the-fly adjustable clasp, which is definitely a nice addition. Very easy to use these clasps that Watchdives use. So you just push in there and then you can slide the links in or out. So very, very easy to resize. And like the Thorn, this has a nice domed crystal, so they refer to it on the Watchdive site as a top hat crystal. It's very similar to the one on the Thorn. The Milifortic, by comparison, has a flat crystal, which is, as you can see, is very slightly raised above the bezel. But the crystals on all 3 of these watches are great, really, really clear, and the watches are super, super legible. If I put each of them in turn on my 6 1/4 inch wrist, you'll get a feel for what they look like. I'll just take off my Mercure that I'm wearing today, put that down. So we'll do the Thorn first. I would say, as you can hear, the Thorn is a little bit on the jangly side. If I do the bezel as well, it's quite a clicky bezel and there is a bit of play in it. So I know they're going for a vintage style with this one. I personally don't mind the bezel. I don't mind the jangliness of the bracelet either. Some people may not be so keen on that, but it feels to me quite kind of vintage appropriate. So I'll put that on my 6 1/4 inch wrist. You can see what that looks like. Fits me very, very nicely indeed. Slightly downturned lugs. And probably worth actually quickly, while I think of it, comparing the side profiles of these 3 watches. So the Watchdives is definitely the one with the most curvature to the lug, so it really does come down quite a bit there, which makes it hug the wrist very nicely indeed. The Thorn, not quite so much, but a slightly slimmer looking case, so slightly slimmer case profile on that one. And then the Milifortic, definitely more of that kind of classic modern slab style of sub, so very little downturn at all. There's barely any, but still I have to say on my wrist, because of those female end links, it does fit nicely. So there's that one, as you can see, a very good fit. I have in the past had trouble getting decent fits from sub homages that have male end links, because the links just tend to protrude a little bit too much. Let's give this one a wipe and then get this on rest. So again, a very, very nice fit. This one is, I forgot to say, is slightly smaller. So this is a 38mm case. It is 47mm lug to lug and 13.8mm thick. The Milifortic, as I said, 40mm in diameter, but 47mm lug to lug, so slightly longer, but the slimmest at only 12mm thick. And you can see the rehort on this one is really quite impressively small. They've done a bit of magic there to get the NH35 in there with that limited of a rehort. So it really does look like a slimmer watch than you might expect. In terms of bezel action then, so the bracelet on this one, really nice and solid feeling, far less jangly than the Thorn, and the bezel action is lovely, so no back play at all, and a really nice rich sound to it as well, I have to say. And then finally, bezel action on the Watchdives is also very good. It's a bit tinier in terms of its click, but very little back play. I would say the Milifortic wins in terms of bezel action, with the Watchdives second and the Thorn third. So really, I think which is your favourite of these will very much depend on your taste. I think they are all fantastic watches, all really, really great value for money, and definitely I would happily recommend any of them if you're after a sub homage. So really it comes down to, do you want something that looks kind of bang up to date, a 70s style one, or something a little bit older? Completely up to you, but yeah, I would definitely recommend all three of them. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed that comparison today. If you've got any questions, chuck them in the comments. Please give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, and also consider subscribing for more simple watch reviews.